Hi and very warm welcome at Amish Shackle 5858. I am Amish Shackle. Following news headlines have been reported by world major English news channels and news agencies. So please watch it. I am again thankful to all news media outlets for letting me use their contents. I greatly appreciate that. I am available 24/7 if they need any assistance. Now go to the headlines.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News.
Good evening, I'm John Dickerson.
I'm Maurice Dubois.
We start with a correction.
That is what they call it when stocks are down 10% from their all-time highs. The S&P 500 entered that territory today.
The NASDAQ was already there, and the Dow is just 300 points away.
The corrections are part of the confusion over the rapid changes coming out of Washington, on and off tit-for-tat tariffs, federal job cuts, now including the post office, and the possibility of a government shutdown.
Today, the commander-in-chief of the trade war threatened a whiskey rebellion. President Trump said he'll put a 200% tariff on European alcohol if the EU puts a 50% tax on American whiskey in retaliation for his tariffs on steel and aluminum.
Kelly O'Grady here now to look at the impact of those metals tariffs here at home. Kelly.
Well, those 25% tariffs on imported aluminum and steel are already in place and could impact industries you wouldn't expect. So we spent time with one New York-based craft beer maker who's figuring out how to manage these new costs when her expenses were already ticking up.
So the three main things that are on our mind with imports right now are steel, which are all these tanks, aluminum for the cans, and the grain that goes into the beer.
Leanne Darlin is a brewer based in New York. Tariffs are the latest challenge in her competitive industry.
We're still growing, and we're very grateful for that, but margins aren't wonderful. It's still a challenge.
And what are some of those challenges?
What keeps me up at night most is just the changing consumer preference towards alcohol. Other than that, just rising costs of everything.
Darlin and her biz partner have 5 Talea beer co-tap rooms in 4 years. The cost of aluminum in the last 5 years has increased by more than 30%. Grain costs 20% more, and steel is up more than 40%. And that's before tariffs.
So
tonight, breaking news as we come on the air, the stock market plunges again. President Trump's new 200% tariff threat sending one key market now into correction territory. Also tonight, the new poll showing Americans are concerned by what they're seeing. Also tonight, the major storm moving across the country, the Midwest and Northeast next, and the mother arrested tonight accused of keeping her stepson captive in their home for more than 20 years since he was a boy. He set fire to the home so authorities would come save him. First tonight, President Trump defiant, escalating his trade war with America's allies. The Dow falling another 537 points today. The S&P 500 slipping into correction territory tonight. The president insisting he's not backing down. And the new poll tonight, what Americans are saying about President Trump's handling of the economy and about his tariffs. Also tonight, will the government shut down? Senate Republicans and Democrats locked in a standoff. Democrats furious with President Trump and Elon Musk's sweeping firings. Thousands of American workers fired, and they're angry over the terror. Thousands of American workers fired, and they're angry over the tariffs. But do Democrats want to be responsible for shutting down the government? Rachel Scott and what she just learned. Tonight, the powerful cross-country storm. A confirmed tornado tonight. Severe storms and possible tornadoes moving into the Midwest. Then the system hits the Northeast. Lee Goldberg has the forecast. That horrific case of mother accused of holding her stepson captive for more than 20 years. The stepson now 32, weighing just 68 pounds, setting fire to the home, hoping firefighters would come save him. And when asked if he was hungry, He said, all day, every day, my entire life. The major headline tonight in the search for that missing Pittsburgh college student on spring break in the Dominican Republic. Tonight, the International Police Agency, Interpol, now involved in this case. Overseas tonight, Vladimir Putin and what he's now signaling about the U.S.-backed ceasefire for Ukraine and Russia. Putin now saying he wants to talk to President Trump. James Longman in Ukraine. Back in the U.S., the chilling 43-second video tonight emerging in that case of the two girls murdered while on a trail, being followed by the suspect. And now in the video, you can hear what the girls say about the man who was following them. The alarming scene, green flame seen shooting from students evacuated, an entire campus shut down.
Tax on people below $150,000 annually, and sources are that the Treasury Department doesn't have any to act.
No, that's taking it out of context. What we discussed was when the president balances the budget, his first move is going to be, he has suggested that he would like to waive taxes for people under $150,000. That's aspirational, that when we balance the budget, and let me tell you, he's got a plan to balance this budget, right? We are going to take $1 trillion out of the waste, fraud, and abuse of all of our entitlements and all of our systems and all of our waste, and then we are going to raise $1 trillion. That's the Trump card. The Trump gold card is going to be a huge revenue producer. Tariffs are going to be a huge revenue producer, and then getting rid of all the tax scams like Ireland making $75 billion trade, budget surplus. We've got all the ships of the world having imagine a Liberian flag so they get out of paying U.S. taxes. You cut all that stuff out, you got a balanced budget, but on the way, we're going to cut no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security.
So when should
on overtime and no tax on Social Security.
So when should Americans expect a balanced budget by? What is the goal on that, Howard?
I love that question. Think about it. Our objective is during President Trump's term, over the next 4 years, we are going to try to balance the budget. Now, obviously, the sooner we balance that budget, the more we can all enjoy the possibilities that exist under Donald Trump's presidency. He would like to replace the Internal Revenue Service with the External Revenue Service and let all those countries who
in the next 4 years, you're saying it could take as long as 4 years, but
oh no, I don't want it to.
Canada's attempt to lower tensions this Thursday night. 2 cabinet ministers and Ontario's premier are in America's capital.
We want a constructive meeting. Canada only works as a state.
The threats Trump repeated about NATO members in front of the head of NATO. A BC woman detained by U.S. immigration.
This may take months for her to get out of custody.
Why she was arrested and the inhumane conditions she says she's endured. And hoping for a homecoming. The mission to bring 2 astronauts back to Earth after a prolonged delay. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Tariffs are at the top of the news again. Ontario's premier has made another trip to Washington.
Morning, I'm Oliver Ferry, and this is Daybreak. Vladimir Putin says Russia in principle supports a proposed US-brokered ceasefire in Ukraine, but it needs to be reworked, something which his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky says Moscow shows just wants to lay down preconditions to complicate a truce. G7 members gather in Quebec for a summit focused on Ukraine with the shadow of Donald Trump's trade wars looming. Meanwhile, host Canada prepares to swear in a new Prime Minister. Economist and former banking chief Mark Carney will be talking to our correspondent Christopher Cooley. Donald Trump threatens to slap 200% tariffs on champagne and other alcohol imports from the European Union in retaliation at EU countermeasures to Washington's steel and aluminium tariffs. It's a move that industry figures warn could seriously affect restaurants in the United States.
This is Asia Now.
It's 2 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 11:30 in New Delhi, and 1 o'clock in Jakarta. Immigration and at this hour. Russian President Vladimir Putin cast doubt on the 30-day ceasefire proposal for Ukraine, setting 3 conditions for a deal. Peace talks and an end to the war dominating the agenda as G7 foreign ministers meet in Canada. Senior diplomats from Iran, Russia, and China convene in Beijing for talks on nuclear issues just days after Tehran rejected Washington's orders to resume dialogue over its nuclear program. And former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte set to make his first appearance at the International Criminal Court later today. Reports say his legal team will push for his temporary release. This day on ABC TV and ABC iView. Today, the Prime Minister to discuss Ukraine peacekeeping efforts with allies as ceasefire negotiations continue.
This can end tomorrow if Vladimir Putin ends this illegal and immoral invasion.
Jerusalem rejects a UN-backed report which accuses Israel of genocidal acts and sexual violence in Gaza. New details emerge over a suspected terror hoax involving a caravan filled with explosives in Sydney's northwest. Record rainfall for Albany as thunderstorms lash Western Australia's Great Southern region. And calls for better screening to ensure weight loss drugs are going to patients with eating disorders. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Nakari Thorpe. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has cast doubts on the US proposal for a 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine.
Thanks, Bev. Good evening to you. Our top stories. Donald Trump says Vladimir Putin's comments on the US ceasefire plan are promising, but not complete, after the Russian president suggested he has issues with the proposal. The US president was speaking alongside the head of NATO, Mark Rutte, in the Oval Office, shortly after Putin appeared to set out a series of sweeping conditions that would need to be met before Russia would agree to such a truce. But Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, has said Putin's response is manipulative. He's called for more sanctions against Russia to force them to the table. But Trump says he'll make sure Russia doesn't attack US allies, adding he has leverage on Putin without elaborating, and suggests progress is being made.
And maybe we're close. We're getting words that things are going okay in Russia, and it doesn't mean anything until we hear what the final outcome is. But they have very serious discussions going on right now with President Putin and others, and hopefully they all want to end this nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's a horrible thing.
Thousands of jobs in the UK's healthcare sector will be cut after the Prime Minister announced NHS England is to be abolished to tackle bureaucracy. NHS England employs around 13,500 people. The move is expected to take up to 2 years. Well, Sir Keir Starmer says the state's overstretched and unfocused, and he's described the world's biggest quango as if they get rid of it, that'll refocus and reduce waiting lists. Sir Keir says the decision's been influenced by global events.
National security is economic security.
and strength abroad, and we definitely need that more than ever at the moment, but that demands security back at home.
A teenager who stabbed a schoolgirl to death in a row over a teddy bear has been jailed for at least 23 years. Hassan Sintamu had a history of attacking girls and carrying knives before he killed Eliane Andam in Croydon in September 2023. He had admitted manslaughter but was found guilty of murder and having a blade after a jury rejected his claim that autism affected his ability to exercise self-control. Pastor Mark Rossell gave a statement on behalf of the family.
The fact that this crime was committed by a minor has unfortunately resulted in a sentence that we believe falls woefully short of true justice. Despite the horror of the crime, the premeditated nature of the attack, the brutality of her death, and the permanent void it has left in our hearts, the legal system's response has left us feeling abandoned and unheard.
Well, the killers of Sarah Sharif have failed in their appeal against the sentences handed down in 2024 relating to the 10-year-old's murder. Irfan Sharif and Manash Batul were jailed for life with minimum terms of 40 and 33 years, respectively, after being found guilty of the murder. Sarah's uncle, Faisal Malik, was found guilty of causing or allowing her death. He was jailed for 16 years. Appeal judges heard how Sarah had suffered 71 recent injuries at the time of her death, including broken bones, burns, and bite marks. The judges rejected the appeal and ruled that Sharif's sentence was not unduly lenient. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with more in just under an hour.
Very good morning to you. 6 o'clock on today's show. Ukraine's president says Vladimir Putin is too scared to tell Donald Trump he wants to continue the war in Ukraine.
Plus, it was a great night for the British clubs in European football, with Manchester United, Tottenham, Chelsea and Rangers all winning.
Not bad at all on Friday, the 14th of March. Russia's president says questions remain over the nature of the ceasefire in the war in Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky says Putin's response to a truce is manipulative. The Health Secretary tells Sky News 9,000 people will lose their jobs when NHS England is scrapped. Falkirk residents tell Sky News they don't know how they're going to get the money to pay for the UK's biggest council tax hike. Sky News visits the 1 trillion ton megaberg that's threatening South Georgia and its wildlife.
And in sport, Britain's Jack Draper has reached the semi-finals in Indian Wells for the first time in his career. He will now meet Carlos Alcaraz.
Very good morning to you. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Africa News. The news.
The European Union has announced a €4.7 billion investment package for South Africa to support green energy and vaccine production, strengthen economic and political ties. The commitment was made during the first bilateral summit between the EU and South Africa in 7 years, held at President Cyril Ramaphosa's office in Cape Town.
Both our unions arose from the depths of conflict and suffering.
Aid agencies distributing U.S. food aid in Ethiopia's war-affected Tigray region said they had to stop feeding millions of people because of U.S. Trump administration restriction on foreign aid. They claim most of their services had to stop due to lack of finances.
When you go to Salakari in Nakalians, there is nothing, any supply of food, supply of medicine, even shelters is destroyed by winds and other issues. This is the impact.
Tigray relied heavily on U.S. funds more than 2 years after the war killed hundreds of thousands. Full-scale recovery efforts are yet to start, with millions still facing hunger as health system is ruined and hundreds of schools remaining closed. The reality has now been set on the Tigrayans who are faced by the war, but now have nothing to do but to wait for any imminent.
In Moranga County, a 12-wheeled truck equipped as a modern clinic is offering dialysis services to patients who would otherwise struggle to access treatment. This mobile unit, spearheaded by healthcare organization Bana Care, is a significant step towards bridging gaps in medical accessibility for those suffering from chronic kidney disease. According to Kenya Renal Association, more than 5,500 people needed dialysis in Kenya in 2021, with numbers expected to rise.
People have faced issues with accessibility due to geography, and so these advantages, it's bringing it to them. They don't have to go. It's like when you have a chronic kidney disease, it should mean like chronic travel.
The truck is equipped with state-of-the-art machines which provide better outcomes than traditional dialysis machines. The mobile dialysis service is free for anyone registered under the Social Health Authority National Insurance Scheme. Patients can also receive treatment through Kangata Care, a county government insurance program in Muranga.
The advantages are that it brings the dialysis services closer to the people, to the patients who need them. It enables the patients to cut down on their transportation costs. It decreases the strain on resources in hospitals which are already a little bit stretched. Then it's a scheduled mobile dialysis unit so that it reaches those patients twice a week. Obviously, there is a cost of taking the mobile unit there. It still has the same cost of nursing services, auxiliary services that any other unit has. And finally, how do you manage the waste?
Despite the growing demand, the country has fewer than 200 dialysis centers for a population of over 50 million people.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shekel 5858. I am Amir Shekel. Have a good life. Bye-bye.